Hello and welcome to another episode of Clean Talk. Today is January 25th, 2024. This is our inaugural Clean Talk episode for the new year 2024. We're in our third year of Clean Talk, the infection prevention podcast, and very excited to have our inaugural episode in our facility here at the Seal Shield warehouse in Jacksonville, Florida. It's a beautiful sunny day outside. We've got the air conditioning on in here because we've got a hot show planned for you. Very excited to have our guest today. Dr. Brian Nguyen is an ophthalmologist, and he's the founder and CEO of Steri-write. Dr. Nguyen, welcome to Clean Talk.
Thank you, Brad. So nice to be here. A little bit about myself. I'm a board-certified ophthalmologist, 30 years in private practice in Northeast Ohio, so I appreciate the warm weather here in Florida. Thank you. As an ophthalmologist, my focus of clinical care is surgical and medical diseases of the eye. So cataract surgery, glaucoma surgery, laser vision correction, such as LASIK. And that's what I do as an ophthalmologist during the day. My night gig is Steri-write, which we'll have a chance to talk about in a little bit.
Well, I'm sure our audience will be very interested in the Steri-write product, a great emerging infection prevention technology. Why don't you tell us what Steri-write is? Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with that.
Steri-write is the world's first and only, that I'm aware of at this point, UVC LED touchless sanitizer for writing instruments. It offers a clean pen every time to the end user using UVC LED technology in a touchless fashion. Think of it as almost a paper towel dispenser where you wave your hand in front of it. It spits out a clean paper towel. Steri-write spits out a clean pen that's used by the end user and then replaced in the top of the unit to be recycled through the day. So it's green and clean. We're not putting pens in landfills anymore. And that's the idea behind Steri-write.
So obviously a lot of benefits. We know that pens can be a cross-contamination point, certainly in healthcare. What was the need that you recognized that caused you to create this solution for infection prevention?
Well, if I can give you a little bit of the backstory to Steri-write, about 10 years ago, I made the observation from my pediatrician colleagues that they had two waiting rooms, one for well kid visits and one for sick kid visits. And I thought that made a lot of sense. Let's not intermingle the sick kids with the well visit kids. However, those parents registered those patients in a central registration area and were using pens out of a basket or pens that were on a clipboard with a chain. And so the two waiting rooms made sense to me, but the registration part of it didn't. And I thought there was cross-contamination there. And I was driving back from vacation with my family, and I told my wife, I'm going to invent something that sanitizes and sterilizes pens. And that's where the idea was originated for Steri-write.
Well, I think it's intuitive, right? We've all been in the waiting room. You're surrounded by a bunch of sick people, and here you are sharing pens and pads to log in to get registered for your healthcare treatment. So do you have any evidence on what the problem really is and how Steri-write helps to address the issue?
So there's been a number of reports published on what germs live on pens or shared writing instruments, and that's been going on for the last decade or so. The Cleveland VA, under the direction of Curtis Donsky, reached out to me and wanted to study pens and the Steri-write device. And it was very interesting what they did. So in the Cleveland VA, they went around and they swabbed pens in communal areas, such as pens in a basket where there's employee health or clinical areas. And they found that 64% of those pens were contaminated with some type of bacteria. They also found that 6% of those were contaminated with MRSA, which is methicillin-resistant Staph aureus. Superbug, which we're all familiar with. They found a need. Let's look at and see what we can do with this. And plus, they were looking for a solution to kiosks where their patients would sign in and put their fingers on kiosks. And they were looking for electronic stylus that the patient could use to put their information in without having to touch the kiosk. And so that's what started the study. So they ran inoculated pens through the Steri-write device and found that the device did quite well with, bugs that are susceptible to UVC radiation. And it was a reported 99.9% success rate of killing those common pathogens found on writing instruments. Some interesting arms of the study is that they targeted MRSA, the superbug, and they have colonized patients that are in a ward. That's what they do. They isolate those patients with known MRSA. And they went to those patients and they gave them 2 pens to write with for 30 seconds. And then they took those pens back and inoculated them and found out what was the transference rate. From that, receiving those pens from those patients, there was a 35% transference rate. Another very interesting thing they did is that one of the pens they gave back to the examiner to use with a gloved hand. And the examiner wrote with the pen for 30 seconds. The examiner then took that gloved hand and plated the glove on plates. And they found that there was close to a 30% transference rate of MRSA with a gloved hand writing with that pen for 30 seconds. And I thought that was impressive. I didn't realize the transference rate would be that high, although anecdotally looking back, that's why MRSA is a problem.
Right. I'm not surprised it's that high, but you point out it is a big problem for these cross-contamination points. MRSA, the superbug, resistant to antibiotics. All of our audience members are familiar with that, and the fact that it's being transferred on these common touch items, pens, keyboards, etc. The data is there, and the evidence is there, and it's something that we should be cognizant of and look for solutions to address. So that was the motivation for starting Steri-write. I'm always interested in speaking with physicians who have become entrepreneurs. So you're an ophthalmologist, you see this opportunity in the marketplace and you decide, you know what? I'm going to be an entrepreneur. What is the thought process that drives that? And, what has that experience been like?
Well, as an ophthalmologist, and I'm generalizing here, but most ophthalmologists are gadget folks.
Okay.
We're in, high-tech microsurgical instruments. We're using lasers. So we're gadget people that like to fix things via surgical means. So it was, for me, it was kind of a natural progression into entrepreneurship. Here's a problem. I want to fix it. Okay, what's the solution? And how do I come up with that solution? So it was kind of a natural attrition for me.
So what have you learned as an entrepreneur versus being an ophthalmologist? What have you kind of discovered that maybe you would have never known if you hadn't crossed over into entrepreneurship?
There's challenges in anything we do in life. And, life is kind of this emotional roller coaster. I wasn't quite prepared for the emotional roller coaster of developing, inventing, bringing a product to market, and selling that product in the market. So it takes patience and it takes true grit, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, what's been the best part about founding your own infection prevention technology company and creating the Steri-write product?
Well, it's always cool to develop something, to patent the device, to make the device, manufacture it. But the high point is seeing it used in public. When you see and you get the feedback from the end user that, hey, this is really cool, we like this, there's nothing better than that. There's nothing better than that.
So I'm sure there have been a lot of challenges. It's always a roller coaster ride. When you start a new venture, what have been some of the biggest challenges you've faced in starting Steri-write?
Well, it's the details with bringing a product to market, manufacturing, the regulatory constraints. You have to think about that. What you put in the instruction manual in print. And now I realize why most instruction manuals are terrible, because usually it's the last thing that's done before the product goes to market, and it's put together quite quickly. And we had a couple authors, including myself, on the instruction manual, and I can tell you By the time you have everything, the right fonts for the right print, and the regulatory agencies look at it and say it's okay, that can be a challenge.
Absolutely. I'm sure many more challenges as well. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the technology. It is an elegant product. I've had a chance to use the product. We actually have it in our demo room here at Seal Shield. Tell us a little bit about the technology and how it works.
Okay, so the technology utilizes germicidal UVCs. Which is a big plus for this type of application because it cuts down on the power consumption of the unit. And this particular unit can be run on 8 D-cell batteries. We don't have the degradation effects of using vapor bulbs in this, the bulbs that were used in a lot of units. So we don't have to worry about that. Pretty much what we do is just look at the voltage across the array, and if ever that drops, then we know there's a problem. Haven't seen, and there's a warning light that goes on. But these LEDs in this particular unit last for greater than 5 years, normal use. But the way it works is pens put in at the top, and the unit itself holds 14 pens at a time. So there's always a pen ready on demand. Goes into the UVC chamber. And that UVC chamber actually spins the pens 120 degrees every 15 seconds to be sure every side of that pen is irradiated with the UVC light. So UVC LEDs were a game changer, are perfect for this type of application. And I think there's future applications down the road that are going to be as well received as the Steri-write application.
Well, I applaud you for the thoughtfulness of your design, and a lot of our audience members are very familiar with UVC, and of course, UV radiation has been around for a very long time, but during COVID, we saw an increase in UV solutions to help prevent COVID transmission and cross-contamination, and now the market is starting to understand that there are differences in UVC and those sources, and as you mentioned, the mercury bulbs that are traditionally used in many of the UV robots have a very broad spectrum. They put off a lot of energy. There's some benefits to that you can have low exposure times for high kill rates, but you're getting a lot of excess noise in the spectrum that can cause material degradation and some other issues. UVC LEDs allow you to have a very narrow bandwidth in the efficacious spectrum, eliminate some of that noise that causes material degradation, and it's really ideal for close proximity for device disinfection. So I applaud you that you have used that solution. As you mentioned, low energy, low heat, high efficacious, and because you can get so close to the pens with your UVC LEDs, you're getting great disinfection. You also mentioned the rotating 120 degrees. We know that one of the challenges inherent in UV is shadowing, right? So you're only getting effects from where the UV light is actually touching, and I think it's very thoughtful that you make sure that the pens are rotating sufficiently that they're getting full exposure to the UV radiation. I think it's a great product design.